Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Bio. I want to talk with you a little bit about the creative mind versus the competitive mind. When you look into the world, it depends on how you look at the world, right? You can look at the world physically as it is and just see things as they are, or you could be influenced actually by the media, by magazines, by YouTube, by various other images that are placed in your mind. What's interesting about that is that you have the power to control much of that. How much of that is actually going to be something that you have control over versus you don't have control over? What you don't have control over, if you feel like it's more than what you have control over, it's going to affect your actions and what you feel like your potential is. If you feel like you have more control over it, then your actions are going to be more and you won't have those limitations. If you feel like you don't have control, then you're going to sit there and say, okay, I've reached my limit. That's all there is. That's all I can do. I can't do anything more in this particular area. Now, if you think about the creative mind and the competitive mind, to create something, you have to be motivated or inspired to have a vision of it. Let's just use the example of a light bulb. You have to have a vision or an idea that you want to create light. But how are you going to do that unless you have some kind of like tools or instruments to begin tinkering with to create what would have been, let's say, in that case, would have been the candle. So you knew there was a candle, but you want to create a light that runs without burning out. So you want to create that. So you have to go into a space mentally that is not visibly evident to you. A lot of people, they look at what's there and they say, okay, I have to build from what I have in front of me. So they see this and that, and they see the limitations, and then they just give up and they stop. That's the competitive mind. So the competitive mind says, okay, if I can't do it, I have to grab this piece from this person or take this from this person. Let's just use the light bulb, for example. If somebody was trying to create a light bulb, first of all, they weren't even going to imagine the light bulb because they weren't thinking the creative mind. So their next best option would be to somehow steal candles. See, so it would be to take what's already there. That's what you do when you compete. If you're trying to create, what you have to do is go inside, imagine, kind of architect design, and then bring pieces or parts together, try to get them to stick together in order to create. So this happens on many different levels, on different types of industries, whether it's banking, whether it's retail, whether it's travel, all kinds of things. There's this competitive world, and then there's the creative. There's people who are innovating and creating, and then there's people who are just taking, shifting, pushing and pulling. Now, how does that pertain to you and your dreams and your dream life? Well, one of the challenges that we have is that we have, let's say, X amount of resources or dollars. We have X amount of vehicle space or access or X amount of people that we know. So let's say that you have a vision to live a certain way, but you see X amount of dollars, you see X amount of clothing, vehicles, housing, and people that you know, and you're scratching your head saying, how am I going to live that lifestyle if I have this stuff? Now, you have two choices at that moment. You can use the creative mind or you can use the competitive mindset. If you decide to use the competitive mindset, then you're going to decide that, okay, I have these X amount of materials, so in order to live my dream life, I have to go acquire X amount of materials or something from someone else. They're going to lose them, I'm going to get them. So I'm going to win and they're going to lose. So then you're going to just start competing. Now that competition takes its form in many different ways. It could be with degrees, it could be positions or levels with the institution that you're in. It could be with the kind of arguments that you have with people. It could be even racing around people in traffic and road rage. It could be a lot of different things that are causing you to try to compete, basically for limited resources or scarce resources. Now, our economy, particularly, let's just start from the United States of America, our economy is pretty much driven by this mentality and this mind state. And it's the dominant mind state. Okay, there's a lot of writing and a lot of evidence that show that our environment was created from the creative mind state. But after the industrial age, and there was so much created, then it started to appear more and more that what needed to be done was to compete over what was already done. So much land was occupied, so much of the earth's resources were already tapped, so much money was already in circulation. We went off the gold standard. So then people started looking at things like, okay, everything is scarcity, economics, and it's supply and demand. I have to basically compete to make it. And that's where we get the concept of the competitive markets, free enterprise markets, and all these things. But what's ironic about that is if you look at every physical object in existence, at some point, whether it's a bridge like the bridge behind me, whether it's the buildings, whether it's the concrete, the deck, whether it's anything, even these sunglasses, a watch, all these things had to be designed and ultimately created. So if you really look at it, competition very well can exist, and it's fine for competition to exist, but never forget that the source of commerce and enterprise is always creation. And you have to be able to go into the creative space in order to innovate and create anything that's much more of a higher value. A lot of people want to just compete. And what they do is, instead of looking into their brains or their gifts or talents for the abilities of what they can do to compete, they basically try to take. Now, if you look in like marginalized communities, in the hood, in the ghetto and poverty, a lot of times they don't even know that they have the creative power in their mind, and they're under such immense pressure and stress that they go ahead and decide that they're going to just take, steal, rob, kill, deal drugs, do whatever it takes to get out of that environment. They're not aware internally. Some are. There's always that little sliver of few people who decide that, oh wait, I can do something with my brain or my mind or my talents to be of value to the world, and I can make money that way. There's always that sliver. But it's, again, also a choice. My point is that most of us in the modern world, we're much more persuaded and enticed and drawn in to the competitive playing field. We're much more seduced by the competitive playing field, whether it's college degrees or positions in corporations or the housing or the cars that we have or the clothing. All these things are the competitive side. So, but if you want to wrestle free from that, you can go to the creative side. How do you do that? Well, the first thing with the creative side is the imagination. So you have to basically get inside, imagine. You can use the outer resources to imagine from. You can say, okay, well, that's a bridge. Let me imagine something that's different than a bridge, and let me create something. Now, if it's not just for the physical world or engineering like that, think of it as the world of distribution, the world of marketing, the world of sales. Now we have all this online business in this digital world. You can create a blog, you can create videos, you can create audios, you can package materials, you can create ebooks, you can create courses. There's a lot of things that you can create. You can create memberships. Okay, now, what happens is that when people tend to want to create things, a lot of times is not immediately apparent where the revenue or cash flow from that thing is going to come from right away. So the people who actually are competitive tend to mock, scorn, become naysayers, haters, doubters, all of that stuff. But I want to encourage you as a creator of your dream life, to not fall into that by any means. The creative mind, without the creative mind, the competitive mind would basically struggle, because it wouldn't have things that are already in place for it to fight and scrap over. Okay? It's the creative mind that brings in a larger abundance and a larger source into the human experience. That's why we have all the celebrities that we have, all the movies and books and music and artwork and architecture and all of the amazing things that we have in life. Even in the sciences, like Einstein, they were creative. They used the creative power and channeled it toward a particular discipline. So be a creator over a competitor. At the same time, don't let the competitors pull you into competition. Because as soon as they pull you into competition, they want you on their playing field. But when you're establishing a dream life empire, you are far beyond their playing field. You are something of, you're using creative forces that they can't even comprehend, because they're just thinking on the hustle and bustle, win or lose mentality in the regular competitive physical existence. As we say, the dog-eat-dog scrap world. The creative mind is coming from an infinite intelligence, infinite supply, an infinite source. So you have absolutely no idea how powerful it is, its extensive reach. Even if you talk about the subconscious mind, you know, if an individual feels connected to their subconscious mind, that could be miles and miles and miles and miles of bandwidth. Where if somebody's only operating from their competitive, greed-driven brain, that's just the 6 inches between your skull. So which one do you want to have working for you? The 6 inches between your skull, or miles and miles of bandwidth through the ether and air and oxygen that you're permeating through the universe, flowing through you and with other minds and other people? So I would advise you to read a book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, The Science of Being Great by Wallace Wattles, and The Science of Being Well by Wallace Wattles. These are New Thought thinkers. These are people that were in the early 1900s, late 1800s of the United States and other countries that had tapped into some of the universal truths that were hidden from the masses. So they just basically revealed how things really work. Unfortunately, a lot of people weren't able to tap into them at those times, and they just basically drifted into only the competitive living. But there's many, many people for many years who have been tapping into the creative form. So I'm offering you these two, the creative mind state, the competitive mind state. Examine both, Google both. I'm not making this up, so examine both for yourself and decide, make a decision which one you find it more advantageous to live from. I know that if you're interested in creating an empire of your dream life by your own sovereignty and your own design and your own freedom, it'd be highly advantageous to lean more toward the creative. Doesn't mean you can't compete. It doesn't mean that you will never compete, but it's far, far, far much more rewarding to be able to create than it is to compete. Creative versus competitive, dream life empire.